Jason, welcome on stage. Let's give him a big round of applause. You have 10 minutes.
How do I always start? Who do you trust? You can answer. You don't trust anybody. Anybody else? Your mom? Who else? Who do you guys trust? Yourselves? Your friends? Well, some of your friends? Maybe for some certain things, right? So the question we ask while we're getting the presentation up is, why is it, if we all trust the same way based on relationships and who we know in the real world, why is it that the trust mechanisms for digital transactions have absolutely nothing to do with how we trust in real life? Online, we're asked to trust based on things like 6 random people that you've never met, that you don't know. You may not share anything in common with them, their values, their biases, their preferences. Oh, and by the way, they may not be real people. They might be bots or paid reviewers. But according to those 6 people, this nanny is really good, and you should leave your 2-year-old with her. Are you convinced? So at UTU, we're really focused on how do we bridge the gap between how we trust in the real world and how we're asked to trust online. So these transactional models of trust really miss what it is to be human. When I say transactional models, I mean things that are just based on these anonymous reviews or anonymous 5-star ratings or these opaque calculated scores, but they really miss our humanity. And in the long run, I think the technologies that win are the ones that embrace our humanity, not try to replace it. And Eric Schmidt actually really said it best, that in a networked world, trust is the most important currency, and we take this quite literally in how we think about trust. So there's some trends that have been evolving over the last several years, that enable us to do what we're actually doing right now. So there's this transition from the Internet of Things to the Internet of Services. We used to just buy goods and things and widgets off the net. Nowadays, we're hiring every service we can imagine. With that transition comes a lot more exposure to risk, to potential for things to go wrong. You have the antiquation and breakdown of traditional institutional trust. We don't trust the same way we did 5, 10, 15 years ago. And we think that there's a social model of trust that has started to evolve that we're really trying to embrace. And if you think, it's actually hearkening back to how we trust in real life, right? So that's already been happening whether we like it or not. You also have increased availability of data streams, of processing power, of privacy preservation mechanisms, of any number of factors that enable our technology to actually come to bear. And more importantly, you have this trend towards personalization, best fit rather than highest rating, that curation is more valuable than aggregation. So we combine AI, blockchain, and disruptive business models to bring a new model or a new paradigm of digital trust. We have technical innovations, we have business model innovations. So part of our technical innovation is how we actually think about trust, our model of trust or our theory of trust. It's totally descriptive, not prescriptive. So we don't believe that there's any one universal recipe for trust. There's only how I think about trust and how you think about it, and how you think about it today versus tomorrow versus the next day, from one situation to the next. So we don't try to claim that we have the ultimate recipe for understanding all human trust, only that we are really good at understanding how you and this and that person understand trust in a particular situation, what matters to you. The power of the blockchain to give people ownership over their data and to essentially tokenize trust. And then the business model innovation is to now take trust, which has historically been delivered as product, whether as part of a product on a platform or as a consumer-facing community, say TripAdvisor or Yelp. But we all know these things are manipulated, abused. We're moving trust as an infrastructure service to change all of that. You can see some of our recommendations, they're flexible, they're personalized, they're contextualized, and they're transparent. So again, we're never telling you, we think you should trust this person, trust us. We're showing you data points and validations that are specifically attuned for you, in the way you already trust. Our job is only to serve the best information in the right place, in the right time, in the right way, to help you make the most informed decision with whatever you're trying to get online. So how do we actually get all of this data to train our AI? So we started as a taxi app back in 2013. Actually, we were the first taxi app anywhere in Africa. And we started to realize that the problem we were trying to solve in Kenya was completely different than the problem Uber was solving in California. They were solving the problem, how do I get a taxi? Nobody in Nairobi at the time had the problem, how do I get a taxi? We had the problem, how do I get a taxi that I actually trust, that I feel safe? And by the way, drivers were fearing passengers just as much as passengers were afraid of drivers. So it was mutual mistrust. We said, well, how does people actually sort this already? They have a guy. If I need a ride, I call my guy. If my guy's not there, he sends his guy. If I can't get my guy on the phone, I call Bastian, and he sends me his guy. It's all based on relationships. We said, in fact, that makes a lot of sense. Why don't we build that? So we ended up pulling relationship data from Phonebook, Facebook, and we're working on LinkedIn as well as other data sources. We pulled transactional history, which drivers you choose in the app, always keeping a human in the loop for the decision making so we can learn from each transaction. And then we pull contextual data from the world around these transactions to understand not just that this transaction happened in a vacuum, but what was actually going on, what were the factors environmentally that might have influenced your decision at this moment, so we can understand on a more real-time basis what's driving your decision making and help get you better information. So this leads us to the tokenization of trust. There are two problems with trust. One is the theory, prescriptive versus descriptive. The second is the human element, that our delivery mechanism for trust and the economics of trust are perverse right now. If I go to some of these review sites, do you know how they make money? Their value proposition is trust, but they charge restaurants and hotels money to hide their bad reviews. So their business model undercuts their value proposition. This is totally messed up. We wanted to get money out of trust. We mean that two ways. We want to remove the ability to buy trust. You shouldn't be able to buy fake reviews or fake ratings or any of these things. But if you're a good actor and you help build trust and you help facilitate other people to get good outcomes in the transactions that they need to do, you should actually be able to earn from that process. You're easing transactional friction. So this is what we've come up with as a staking mechanism to endorse your favorite service providers and to earn when those endorsements help others get good outcomes from their transactions. Here's a quick look at the smart contract, which I won't go into too much detail because Bastian's going to give us a little demo in just a minute. And then at the end, we have a really exciting announcement that we'll make. Again, I'll let Bastian cover the smart contract when he does the demo, but essentially it allows you to make an endorsement in either a transparent or privacy-preserving mode. So depending on your comfort level, the type of data that you're working with, the type of endorsement that you want to give, maybe you want to be fully open with your identity, maybe you want to be fully closed, maybe you want to be somewhere in the middle. The idea is that it's your data, it's your endorsement, you should be able to granularly control this. Just some initial results. We've already seen that there's a high correlation between people that are very closely connected in our social graph and the feedback that they give about particular transactions. So the closer you are, the more similarly we tend to feel about transactions that we execute. So this is a really exciting validation from us based on many tens of thousands of transactional data points. And you can see here just a peek into the heart of the technology. This is our social graph where all of the AI systems run. All of the yellow nodes are clients. All of the gray nodes are drivers from our mobility app. This represents about 25,000 users in Kenya and several 100,000 connections. So people often ask, do I have to trade off between quickness or quality of service and getting a service provider that I actually trust? And the answer is, we are so much more well connected than we realize. You don't really have to make that trade-off. Your network and your extended networks are big enough that you can always get a trusted service provider without having to compromise on other factors. So a little bit of how it looks. We might map the relationships from one client to a particular offerer and then choose the best path, the shortest path with the best similarity between the users and the closest connections to show as the validations to help convert that user. Just a picture of our what our API looks like. We are trust as a service, so we're selling through an API on the centralized world and through oracles and smart contracts on the decentralized world. And part of our value proposition is we believe that this ramp from the centralized economy to the decentralized economy is really important. So we're going to skip through this detailed AI stuff. But essentially, it's just to say that doing AI on a small data set is quite difficult, so we break it down into smaller problems rather than doing some pre-processing and then trying to use maybe like a neural network or something like this. We'll break it down into smaller problem sets and compute like the comprehensive trust and then use that to make recommendations. We've also learned that people are overwhelmingly choosing social favorites over otherwise higher rated or closer drivers or cheaper drivers. So we've got tremendous validations. Just some more validations. And we're really seeing ourselves pulling trust infrastructure for the entire digital economy across every sector. That's us on Telegram at UTU Trust. And we just have a quick demo. And while Bastian's doing the demo, I will just make a quick announcement. So UTU is announcing today that we're actually starting quite soon a IDO on Binance DEX. So this will be the first African project to do an IDO on Binance DEX. And you're going to see now the first ever endorsement smart contract of tokenization of trust.
Hey, just some connection issues here. Okay, let's see. Okay, there we are. So we have got a very fresh prototype for our UI, as we envision it, like the recommendations will look like, and it's so fresh indeed that the functionality is not yet connected to our smart contract. So if you choose like this service provider, and then imagine that, and then imagine that you have used the service and then you are to give some reviews and you can give some badges which look really nice and stuff. And then in the end, you choose to endorse this service provider, then what would happen now is our smart contract is being called, and thanks to Nikita, I can just simulate this in the Fire editor, and I've already deployed our contract here and then filled in some of the functional values, parameters here to call. So we can call the endorsement function with some tokens. We initialize each user with 100 tokens initially, and then we should be able to, if the editor wouldn't freeze, we would now be able to call this one, and we see, we have just endorsed 27, meaning we have 100 minus 27 left, 73 tokens. And now, if another user basically uses the same service and then also endorses again the same provider, basically, then that would be just another call in this smart contract, this time from another user's account. So we can just use this one, send the transaction. And so after that, the first user who also endorsed it at first with 27 tokens and who has 73 tokens left in his balance, now has 77 because we added just a fraction of the tokens that both of them staked because he was rewarded for his successful recommendation. And we hope we can deploy a public demo of this thing very soon that's actually usable.
Thanks, everybody. And if you're interested in trust, come talk to us. We are closing out a private round before the IDO starts. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, Jason and Bastian.